Welcome back to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, episode 200, part 2 of today's show. It is June 13th, 2017, a fantastic day in the history of the Thomas Take, the 200th Thomas Take episode. The Thomas Take Sports Podcast, hosted by the one and only host, the voice you are listening to now live on Spreaker.com and YouTube, Ryan Thomas. Thank you for tuning in to my show. Thank you for all the support that I've received since January of 2016. It has been a fun ride that has led me to a lot of amazing opportunities inside the sports world. So I really appreciate the support that you guys give me each and every day between the messages I get on the Facebook page and everything like that. I really appreciate your support. So let me get started by introducing the subject matter of this show. Bellator 180 will kick off on Spike TV. The main event of that card is Phil Davis and Ryan Bader. So I'm looking at this card now. I mean, for the main event on TV to be Phil Davis and Ryan Bader, that was a fight that took place in the UFC a couple years back, and it was a battle between two of the top 5 UFC light heavyweights at the time, in Davis and Bader. Neither Davis nor Bader were able to successfully get a UFC title shot. Neither one could do it. Phil Davis fought Rashad Evans and lost. Ryan Bader fought Glover Teixeira and a couple other people and just couldn't seem to get there. At one point, he did fight John Jones before John Jones was the champion. And it was winner moves on and fights for the title almost. Like, these were the two hot shots, and John Jones destroyed Ryan Bader. Anthony Johnson did as well. Anthony Johnson actually beat both Phil Davis and Ryan Bader. So, long story short, these are two guys that were UFC veterans. Phil Davis is now the Bellator light heavyweight champion. Ryan Bader, one of the most recent newly signed light heavyweights in the Bellator brand. And a guy that I think is still, whether he be in the UFC or Bellator, obviously, like a Rory McDonald, one of the top 5 at his division, at his weight class. So for Bellator to be able to bring this guy in and be like, hey, we will give you an automatic title shot, or we could put you in here with King Mo at Madison Square Garden. He chose to fight King Mo in Madison Square Garden, but King Mo Lawal, former Strikeforce champion, got injured, and Phil Davis, the champion, stepped in and took his place. Very rare that we see that in the sport of MMA, where a champion steps in as the replacement. And that's what we got to see with Phil Davis stepping in for Mo Lawal. So this was the fight that the fans wanted all along, and it's now going to be the main event on Spike TV, free cable, and then we will move on to the pay-per-view side of things, where we got some very interesting fights. Obviously, the main event, and Bellator is promoting this kind of differently than the UFC, where you have 2 main events, where Chael Sonnen will be taking on Wanderlei Silva in a long time, highly anticipated bout where we will see 2 guys that downright hate each other go toe-to-toe. And this all stemmed from their stint on The Ultimate Fighter with each other. And there was a fight. A fight did break out between Chael Sonnen and Wanderlei Silva. Chael retired shortly after due to a positive steroid test, as did Wanderlei Silva. So Chael came back in January this year, fought Tito Ortiz. It did not go his way. He succumbed to a submission. There was a lot of controversy surrounding that fight. Some people even wondered if it was real. I did not, but some people did. And Wanderlei Silva, in his first fight back since the suspension that the UFC laid down on him. So it's been quite some time that these two guys have had this beef that they have had, to be exact, around 4 years. So for that to be the main event on this card, it's more than fitting. But to also have another quote-unquote main event where Fedor Emelianenko will be taking on Matt Mitrione, the former Ultimate Fighter contestant, former UFC heavyweight. Fedor Emelianenko, regarded as one of the greatest MMA heavyweights of all time due to his stint in Pride and Affliction and Strikeforce, never fought in the UFC, was a highly coveted fighter by the UFC, but the deal was just never done. Bellator and Scott Coker, the former president of Strikeforce, made that deal happen pretty damn quick. So here we are. Fedor Emelianenko will be coming out of retirement, taking on Matt Mitrione in the co-main event, or main event 2, as Bellator would put it, for Bellator NYC, Bellator 180, Bellator /NYC. The way they promoted this thing has been kind of weird, but the TV card is Bellator 180, and the pay-per-view is Bellator NYC. So, very interesting stuff, to say the least. You have 2 title fights, in addition to Phil Davis and Ryan Bader. You have 2 title fights featuring the longtime Bellator fighter, the Bellator pioneer, so to speak, Michael Chandler, versus Brent Primus, who is an undefeated, up-and-coming fighter that is a training partner of Chael Sonnen. And Chael Sonnen has stated that he thinks Brent Primus is the cup of tea that Mike Chandler will not be able to handle. Too tough for Michael Chandler. This guy is way too tough for Michael Chandler. Very interesting for a veteran like Chael Sonnen to state that. It could be Michael Chandler's kryptonite, and we could have a new champion in Bellator. And this guy's very young. He's in his mid-20s, so he's coming up onto the scene. Michael Chandler's not past his prime by any means, but they're kind of billing it as Brent Primus is a challenge to Michael Chandler. We'll find out. We will find out. You also have Chinzo Machida, the brother of Lyoto Machida, facing off against Conor McGregor training partner James Gallagher. Gallagher, much like McGregor, is a brash, trash-talking guy, flashy, unorthodox striker that really likes to throw hands, but specifically has phenomenal jiu-jitsu, which is very rare to see at a SBG. Most of those fighters from that staple are stand-up fighters. So I kind of just gave my preview of the fights, and obviously this title of this Thomas Take is preview and prediction. So I'm going to give my prediction, and I also want to talk about one other fight, Douglas Lima versus Lorenz Larkin, the Bellator welterweight championship. Lima was originally supposed to face Rory McDonald, but they wanted to ease Rory into things, give him a warm-up fight with Paul Daly. He passed. So Rory will most likely face the winner of this fight. Larkin, another stud UFC fighter that came over to Bellator. Former Strikeforce fighter as well. So let me give you my prediction. Let's get right to it. The predictions for this card. Phil Davis versus Ryan Bader. I believe that Ryan Bader could very well knock out Phil Davis. But Phil Davis has an amazing wrestling pedigree, as does Ryan Bader. This fight is probably the toughest one for me to predict. But I'm going to go with Ryan Bader winning that fight. Douglas Lima versus Lorenz Larkin, the welterweight title fight for the Bellator organization. I'm going to go with Douglas Lima, who I think is one of the most underrated welterweights, not just in Bellator, but in mixed martial arts. Michael Chandler versus Brent Primus. I think Brent Primus will show up, will be there, will be a challenge for Michael Chandler, but I see Chandler winning the fight. I think he's one of the best lightweights in the world. Fedor Emelianenko versus Matt Mitrione, the return of the last emperor, Fedor Emelianenko. I'm going to go with Fedor by knockout. Chael Sonnen versus Wanderlei Silva. This is where things get kind of tough, and this is where I wanted to dedicate the last 5 minutes of the show on this subject. So it's tough for me to pick this fight, not only because it's the main event, and the main event is supposed to be tough to pick, but in terms of the fact that Chael Sonnen looked downright terrible in his last performance versus Tito Ortiz. He didn't even look the same physically. He didn't look the same mentally. And he didn't look the same when it came time for Big John to say, let's get it on or let's fight. And that really shocked me, to be honest. Even though he had been basically retired for a couple years, I thought that Chael Sonnen would be able to take Tito Ortiz. Tito Ortiz has been on a downward spiral in his career, but Tito looked like he was in very good shape. He looked like he took the fight seriously, being that it was advertised as his last. And realistically, I thought that this was it was going to be a good fight, but I thought Chael Sonnen's wrestling pedigree was way more in depth than Tito's. And Tito took Chael down quickly. Chael did a reversal, then Tito did a reversal, and then choked him and submitted him. So, obviously, Chael looked a little rusty. He admitted he was rusty. And it's tough for me to pick him winning this fight. But this opponent in Wanderlei Silva, who he was supposed to face all along in his first fight in Bellator, has been out of the cage for an even just as long, or if not longer, amount of time than what Chael was in his original fight back in Bellator. From his last fight in the UFC to his first fight in Bellator, Wanderlei has just as long a gap as Chael does, if not longer. So that is a huge advantage for Chael Sonnen. One of the things as well is that Chael's back is somewhat against the wall, being that he had lost this fight to Tito once before. But Wanderlei Silva has the knockout power. Being that Chael lost the fight to Tito, he's 0-1 in Bellator. They put a lot of stock in him coming into the Bellator MMA organization. He's also commentating for the organization. They really need him to get a win, and Chael needs a win. Wanderlei Silva's style, I think, has obviously, I don't even know if you could call it a style. It's literally let your hands fly. Try to make contact with one of the left or right hands, the butter-churning hooks that he throws. I see Chael taking him down. I see Chael keeping him down. I do see maybe Wanderlei catching Chael at one point in the fight. But all in all, Chael should win this fight. Wanderlei has been out of the game longer than Chael was in the moment that Chael returned to the Bellator cage. The amount of time that Wanderlei has been gone, plus being that he was a prescribed testosterone replacement therapy user and wasn't training for quite some time. Wanderlei was retired. He wasn't training at all. Where Chael was retired, but he was still training with the intent to come back. So, I don't know, and I did preface my statement by saying that Chael didn't look like he was in as good a shape, but you're not in as good a shape as you used to be when you're 40, 41 compared to when you were 36, 37. Those 4 years kind of do take some miles off you. So, 4 years of inactivity, 4 years of no mat time in an actual fighting sense. Wrestling and fighting are two different things. So, it's really tough. Wanderlei could catch him, but I really do think that Chael Sonnen has one of the best wrestling pedigrees in the sport to this day. So I'm going to go with Chael P. Sonnen, the American Gangster, with a win over Wanderlei Silva. So to run it back, I have Phil Davis losing to Ryan Bader. I have Ryan Bader winning that fight. I have Douglas Lima beating Lorenz Larkin. I have Michael Chandler beating Brent Primus. I have Fedor Emelianenko with an emphatic knockout victory over Matt Mitrione. And I have Chael Sonnen beating Wanderlei Silva via decision. One fight that I didn't talk about was James Gallagher versus Shinzo Machida. A tough one for Gallagher for sure. I'm going with the SBG guy Gallagher. Those are my predictions for Bellator NYC, Bellator 180 NYC, and my preview